I learned a lot about pool covers this week. I didn't really want to, but I did anyway.
How fun. The grocery store was out of hummus, so all I got was a scolding for not having my mask over my nose.
Oh, Heather. Remember that day that the sun didn't come out on the entire west coast of the US?
Yeah. You mean when the shadows were bright orange and I breathed in a pound of smoke? Kind of hard to forget, Sarah.
It was such a good day. Hello, and welcome to Have Such a Good Day, the show that wants you to do just that. I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Heather Frank, and it's also about the absurdity of everyday life, which, we're all experiencing way more these days.
Man, are we ever, Heath? I don't even know. I don't even know. Every single week, I'm like, is it going to be weirder than last week? And it always
It
is.
is. It's so funny. I talk to a variety of people all the time, and it's like it's just laughable. It's like, well, not laughable. Cry. It's like I cry and then I laugh and then I laugh and then I cry. It's like, you think that how could it get even any worse? But then it does, and it's like
It's really,
the
it
sky is
just gets
orange
worse.
now.
Girl.
Last year I read The Road, by Cormac McCarthy. It's also a movie with Viggo Mortensen,
It's
and
a great
it
book.
is a great book. I love Cormac McCarthy, but I kind of regret reading it because I've been thinking a lot about the road since the sky has been orange, and it's making me
Mm-hmm.
feel like we're just inching closer and closer to this kind of apocalyptic world. And I wish I didn't read it because it kind of scarred me a little bit.
It's a good book. It's a difficult read. It's funny that you mention this because my mother, who is voracious reader,
Mhm.
she reads so many more books than I do, and I sometimes kind of go like, oh, what about this book or this book? Because I want to be part of the conversation. The thing about The Road, for anybody who's not familiar with Cormac McCarthy's style, is I'm a person who I have it's hard for me to pay attention to things, and sometimes I look at a couple pages and I'm like, there's no dialogue. It's going to be all just like
Description.
just description
Oh, I love
and
that though.
well, but because I like, dialogue to me is like, oh, that's like TV. It's
Sure.
like, that's how you're like,
Yeah.
cutting up
Yeah,
stuff.
that's true.
But when I first, the book at first, I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then I was like, I kind of liked it. And
Yeah,
then I got into it and then I was cool with
it was
it.
a page
And I
turner.
actually think it was a very good
I
book.
think the key, honestly, because it is harder and harder to read books, like not listen to audiobooks, but actually read a book. I think you got to get through like 70 pages or something. I think that's the rule of thumb. But real quickly, speaking of books, I feel like I've been getting like I had a whole new slew of books I wanted to read that were just from my own research, variety of things. Like I think it was like Ali Wong's new, book. She's a comedian. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there are some
Mm-hmm.
older titles that I didn't read back in the day that I'm trying to pick up and keep up with. And then I've got like, I'm not kidding. I've had like 10 people recommend books to me that I've bought like on Amazon and the local bookstore. I have the biggest stack of books right now that I think will get me through the winter, but I'm a little overwhelmed by it. It's like I've got my audiobooks, I've got my regular books. Don't really feel like I have that much time to sit down and peel open a book like and sit for 2 hours and read a book. But when I go for walks and stuff, I'll listen to audiobooks, which is a lot easier to get through. But I don't want to be that person that just listens to audiobooks. Like I used to be a voracious reader and I'd like to continue that. So we'll see this winter. That's my plan, is to get myself back into
Yeah.
like the rhythm
It
of
might
it.
be, you might feel different, like on a rainy day where you're like, I mean, I got 5 hours
Totally.
to I don't want to go outside right now. It's just like wet and horrible. You might feel differently and it might be kind of
And
cool,
my
you know?
dad the other day said that he had a really cool like wood burning like stove fireplace that he bought years ago. He's like, you guys should just install it in the house. We'll do it. We'll put it. So we're gonna get a wood burning stove, which will create a really nice ambiance for reading. So I'm excited for that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, the last week has been apocalyptic to say the least.
Uh-huh.
And we can I don't know. Anybody who's not on the West Coast kind of some of you understand what we've been going through, and some of you are like, oh, because that's what happens when you're not near something that is this huge thing. But it was really fucking crazy. On what is it, Friday now, when we're recording this. So on Wednesday morning, I woke up and the sky was dark. And I woke up later than I usually wake up. I'm a pretty early riser,
Mhm.
like I'm up at 6 a.m. I got shit to do.
Hmm.
I make my
Gotta walk the
coffee.
oat.
Yeah, I gotta walk the dog, the whole thing. And I woke up at 8:30 and it was like so discombobulated and was like, what is I don't what day is it? Like, I don't know what's happening, And I had to take the garbage out, and so I did. Taking the garbage out at my house is like, there's like 4 different bins. It's like kind of a thing. It's
Mhm.
gonna take me like 30 minutes. And I'm like, I'm looking at the sky like, where am I? What is happening? Very disorienting. And, before I even was able to ping you, Heather, you said to me, like, are you in the dark? Because I'm in the dark. And we are not, neighbors,
No.
right? Like we're,
Mm-mm.
we're
There's
in
hundreds of miles between us.
exactly California, big states. Heather's way at the top. I'm kind of, in the middle. And then there's, the bottom. But I asked a couple people in LA, I was like, are you in the dark? And they were like, no, I mean, it's hazy, but like,
Mhm.
no, not in
It's
the
like always
dark.
hazy there.
Yeah, like not really, not a big deal. And anyway, and I had to, again, like walk my dog and, do various things that I do in the morning anyway. And I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, it really felt like a horror movie.
Oh, it felt like Blade Runner, like, or
Yeah,
just, yeah, some horror movie. I know. I was going through my head of like all the movies that it felt like, it's really hard to explain if you're not experiencing it.
totally.
Even though I tried to take photos on my iPhone of the orange sky, and it like whited out. It's like, it was weird. It was not like a what you see is what you
I
get.
did the same thing. There were a couple, like, yeah, I sent pictures to people and I'm like, but it's worse than
I added a
this.
filter to
It's
make it
worse.
what it really looked like, because I was like, "This is not correct."
It's hard to explain how weird it was, for anybody who's like not in the area, and most of you aren't, and we know that. There are a lot of fires across California right now, a lot. And apparently a couple of days ago, the smoke from kind of the lingering smoke from the fires was above a marine layer, and so it was sort of like it was blocking up the sun, but actually not like as dangerous as it would be if it was closer to what you're breathing,
Mhm.
and it became a very, very strange
Well, and the
thing.
sun was a red circle. I mean, it was literally a bright red
Oh yeah,
circle, like, in the white marine layer. It was weird that there was no sea breeze at all, because I mean, I'm a right on the cliff of the ocean. There's always some kind of air circulating, even if it's not like windy. Nothing. It's been completely just so stagnant. It's very bizarre. So that adds to the kind of strange sci-fi environment.
absolutely. So, I mean, to kind of, come full circle to like, what does it all mean? Well, frankly, I don't know, but I was thinking like, you know, did did I ever feel fear like this, like the weirdness that I felt the other day when I was a kid?
Mhm.
And because I felt as a single adult, who's like, gets up in the morning and does her thing and works and then goes to bed. It's like I feel like I have it mostly together, but when you get that spidey sense,
Mhm.
you're like, I don't know about all this, like something's really wrong here. Did I really ever feel like that as a kid?
Mm.
And I was thinking about it, like my parents and I, because I grew up not far from where I live now, where it's, it's country and, there's storms and trees fall and, people, there's fires and that sort of thing. Fires, not so much, back in the day, but, but it was definitely a thing. It's like, I remember there being, I think it was like my parents just took care of all that stuff.
Mhm.
I think that like, there were times where, like there have been times that my parents were like, okay, we got to pack up. We're going to go to a motel for the night. We just can't be here. And I was like, why? And they were like, well, their tree might fall on the house or something. And we got to go. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And, as a kid, there's so many things that adults have to like figure out that kids just don't understand.
No, the kids, I mean, I think you probably don't remember it like you did the other morning when you woke up and it was dark because you can't really comprehend it. You're not totally understanding the situation, so it's not as scary in a way.
Totally. And if I would have been a kid and been like, Mom, why is the sun not out? She would have like come up with some sort of an answer and we would have had, ice cream or,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But yeah, like the power of these like memories of like how much and again those of us who are lucky enough to have had parental figures that did things for us, and not everybody has had the same situation, but that kind of thing, like I really look back on, there there's some like kind of crazy shit that happened, but
Yeah.
as a kid I just didn't know because
No.
somebody else was always taking care of
And
it.
also, apparently your memory really does like looking back on life, you don't really remember the super scary stuff, like which is kind of remarkable when you think about it. Like your mind remembers the kind of good stuff and not the stresses. But yeah, when there was that big earthquake in my hometown, where school was out, like there were tremors for days. It like made the downtown of the city like a rubble. And I was in high school. I was like, I think I was a sophomore. But I
It
remember,
was 1989.
yeah. So, okay. So maybe I
Yeah.
was a freshman. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember it being scary, but I don't remember that feeling of being scared. I remember situations that had happened during those days, like that, like, things fell off the wall and that kind of thing, but I don't remember feeling any fear. Like that's a memory I don't have as a child, which is interesting. Um but yeah, I mean, sort of speaking of this is actually like a decent segue into what I wanted to discuss, but I the other day my dad was like, I don't remember what the context was, but I think we were talking about just like what's going on in the world. And there's a lot of crazy stuff in the news every day and that kind of thing. And we were talking about something in relation to like a news story. And, he kind of, taps the side of my head or something and goes, you've always been such a dreamer. And, I think it was something about we were talking about people who can't sleep because of what's happening in the world right now. It's like really hard to get to sleep because people are stressed and whatnot. And I'm like, God, I slept like a baby last night. And he was just like, well, that's because you are able to compartmentalize like reality. And I thought about that a lot this week and how good I've kind of always been at, I mean, sure, I'm affected as anyone else who isn't sleeping at night. I'm obviously very worried about stuff, but I look back on my life and how often I've been able to kind of, I don't know, create sort of like uh, sort of like use my imagination to kind of drift away from reality, at least part of the time. And I realized,
Yeah.
my dad was sort of like, not he wasn't disappointed that I was a dreamer, but he was like kind of trying to shake me back to reality to like talk about real stuff. And I'm like, sometimes I just don't want to talk about real stuff all the time. Like, cause it's just, and I'm not going to be able to sleep at night and I'm going to be depressed. And so for
Right.
me, I told him, I was like, look, like my sister and my dad are really grounded in reality. They've always been very pragmatic and like they're Capricorns. It's like very, I just feel very different, like fundamentally. And I really am embracing this skill. I think especially now with all the chaos in the world, I love that I can escape and I can shift my mood and get lost in my imagination and like a visual little world that I can create with my mind, get my mind off of serious things. And, maybe it's a way of like, we don't have a lot of control right now. Maybe it's like letting go of control and letting kind of my mind take me away. I remember even when I decided to live abroad, I had this total storybook impression of what Paris was from like the books I read. And, you know, and when I went there, it was like kind of harsh because it was reality. It was cold, it was gray, the streets were dirty. There was like a lot of the stuff that I couldn't create in my imagination because why would I? And then I get there and I'm
Right,
like, oh my
right.
God, this is like real life. And I always found like reality can be really harsh. So maybe I've created this way to cope with negative situations. And I'm thinking like, what could I do with this skill? Because really thinking it's kind of a skill now, um, to be productive and constructive, like with this skill. Like obviously the lowest hanging fruit is like write a story, make a movie, like do something creative with this imagination, letting my mind kind of wander into like a different world, kind of thing. Anyway, it was just kind of a little bit of a little stream of consciousness, but and obviously escapism, it's like people immediately think, oh, video games and movies, which is totally part of it. But the
Yeah.
definition of escapism is like trying to create a diversion from unpleasant things that happen in daily life, so I just find the whole thing fascinating, just the whole concept of it. I don't know if you're an escapist, Sarah, or you're a realist.
I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I definitely like to avoid things. But I don't necessarily think that I'm like, you know, escaping reality.
Yeah.
That's, reality is something that quite honestly, the fact of what reality is really like is what, sometimes ruins my day.
Hmm.
And I can't do anything about that because I know it's reality. But I know what you mean. I know, like sort of like just sort of kind of the joy of saying, all right, I mean, we're humans. We're not on this earth to just be like super bummed out and like freaking out and like have a bad time 100% of the time.
Hmm.
That's going to happen, but like that's not why we're here.
No.
So if you can figure out, how to like find the joy,
Hmm.
right? Like, oh, there's a beautiful flower over there, or the sun hit me a certain way, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, like little stuff. I think that is important, and more than ever, I mean, people are struggling
Yeah,
right
and
now.
there's bad stuff that happens all the time. I mean, it's not like bad stuff is only happening now, but like you have to find a way to deal with it or you'll I don't know, like you won't be able to sleep at night ever, which is really bad.
Well, okay, so moving on. This is something that it actually totally plays into what we're already talking about, but I've always been a grammar Nazi. I consider myself very good at this.
Mhm.
For my job, I do a lot of stuff that requires like me to write, copy every day where I'm going to be reading it later.
Mhm.
Used to do that in TV. Now I do that in podcasts, but same idea. And when people mess up, I'm always like, oh my God, I'm like such a dumb mess up that just made like, oh my God, it's like, come on, so easy. And I know that I'm kind of an asshole about it sometimes. Um, but I can't help it because that's just what, I know I'm good at it. And, I've always kind of been like, well, everyone else like get better at it, right? So so today I had to laugh because AP style, which is, this is, how a lot of us journalists at least talk, said that you can use less even when fewer is the correct term. And the tweet that I saw was from a person that I don't know, but they said verbatim. Apparently, AP Style now says that you can use less even when fewer is correct, and so 2020 continues to plumb new depths.
That's
And
funny.
yeah, and I was like I totally get this, but I was like, you know, there are a lot of people who like don't even get this. Like, it's not a joke,
Mm-mm.
but like it's kind of a like a ha ha, like quote kind of joke, like fewer or less or more or um over kind of thing. Like there are a lot of grammar things that I realize, honestly, as I have gotten older, that like I know the difference and that's cool, but I think it's wrong for me to kind of like hold that over other people as much as I have for so long,
Mhm.
because there's just so many different ways that our vernacular is now that I don't know how much it matters anymore.
I agree. I mean, in a way, like that's a really interesting thing about knowing a foreign language like French is they do not like have all this liberty with the language. Like English language takes so many liberties and there's so much slang and that's why foreigners have such a hard time learning it because there's so many exceptions to the rule. There's just so many wacky vernaculars and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of languages in the world that don't do that. I mean, there's usually slang with any language, but not to the extent the English language. Yeah, and there's new words being put into the dictionary all the time, and new things being created, which is really exciting. I think it's really cool. I love the new slang, and I kind
I
of
do
get off on that
too.
stuff.
Yeah. And I really like, again, as like somebody who is like, I'm good at English. Like I always I've always been good at it, like I really mess up. But like there are a lot of things that, whereas I don't know, 10 years ago I might be, say like, Heather, look at your dumb mistake, and you'd be like, oh God, what a mistake. And now it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and I've had to kind of check myself a little bit. Like, all right, you got to just like let that stuff go the way that you would let lots of like societal things go that
Mhm.
maybe mattered more and don't as much now because we're in a different world.
We are, and I've noticed, sometimes even last night I was reading an article on my phone. I was like Psychology Today or some like real site, and it was so screwed up, like the punctuation and the formatting and the spelling and spacing. And there's a lot of that these days. And I think I know some people who are writers, like such as yourself, who it really bothers them. Other people don't care. It's like the lighting thing. It's like some people don't care that the lighting is blue and then other people really care. So I care. I mean, I'm kind of a grammar Nazi too, maybe not as much as you, but maybe it's coming from television and we kind of had to be because a lot of editors are bad spellers. I'm just going to generalize here. Most editors that I've worked with have been men. There's a lot of women editors, don't get me wrong, but most of the ones I've worked with in television have been men, and most of them have been terrible spellers. And so I've being a producer, as Sarah is, you really have to watch, they're the ones that are putting together the text in post production. And so you have to, make sure everything's good to go. So that could be part of it. But that kind of stuff bugs me unless it's slangy and it's like, like sort of purposely funny because it's slang and everything's sort of chopped up. I don't mind. But that kind of stuff is a little bit of a pet peeve for me too.
Oh man, I mean, it really is. But again, at the same time, some of the smartest people that I know and work with are not great with grammar.
Yeah.
They just like fuck up
Yeah.
all the time. And it's the same stuff over and over. Where I'm like, okay, this is just a thing you're never gonna get. So
Hmm.
I'll just like go in and fix it for you. But I am no longer going to be like, oh, I'm better than you because you got
Hmm.
this wrong, because you're also better than me at lots of other things. So, it's a little bit of like a Brave new world, I
It
guess.
is because sometimes I'm just like, I'd rather be like a total genius at like bigger picture stuff than like the nitty gritty, like in a way. But then, I sometimes I'm like, I wish I wasn't so organized and I was better at, you know, executing my creative ideas, like, yeah. So it's like, is it that important? I don't know.
Right, right. And it is and it isn't.
It isn't
I
and
guess
isn't. Yeah,
that's sort
exactly.
of, my takeaway from the whole thing is like, I'm gonna kind of rethink some of the stuff because I used to consider myself on a very high ground. And I think it is important to know the difference between getting something right and getting something wrong. But also language is changing and
Hmm.
people are changing. And the point of all of this is very rapidly changing. And
Hmm.
so, I'm trying to be fluid in that
I
sense.
think that's good that you're doing that, Sarah. It's good to be flexible, especially as we age, we get less flexible and it's harder to change. But I think that with movies, like text, like on screen, something that's published online, I mean, I still think it's important to do it right.
100%.
So this is something that you and I were chatting about earlier this week, and I don't know why it came up. We chat about a million things like throughout the week, so who knows? But and it doesn't even matter. But I've been thinking a lot about, um, how music changes throughout your life and how important to you, or it kind of comes in and out of your life in different ways. And you get really into like maybe an old band you hadn't listened to for 20 years, and you get like a resurgence with like certain, singers and whatnot. It triggered this thought when you had mentioned, I think it was like an episode back where you were saying that you just would rather listen to a podcast. And I feel the same way. I think for me, especially right now, a voice talking is more soothing than music. And that's not altogether, but like when I choose to listen to something, my first choice is to listen to Mark Maron's latest podcast, or listen to Up First by NPR, or listen to my audiobook, because there's something really soothing about that. However, when I, get in the car, I've got Sirius Radio. I've got all my channels programmed. I have a lot of 80s channels, a lot of other stuff. And like the other day, a lot of most of my music listening time is in the car because it's just there. It's like automatic. And I think part of it for me is that when I'm home, music isn't as automatic. I have a record player. I have like, I can use my Alexa. I have ways I can listen to music, but I'm kind of lazy about it. But when it comes on the radio, like the other day, it was like I got in the car and like Sweet Child of Mine just started. I was like, yeah, hell yeah. And of course I'm gonna get
Totally.
really into it. And then it goes into The
Right.
Cure
Yeah.
and
Well, it's that whole like old school radio thing where you're like,
yeah.
it's not up to me. So if it happens when I'm in the car, I feel really special.
Exactly. Like I don't really find the need to have Spotify right now because I sometimes I'm like, I want to listen to that Smiths album. And then I'm like, oh, how am I gonna do that? Well, I'll just use my Alexa. But really, just to take a step back, I was thinking about how you age and how music becomes more or less important to you. And there's a lot of stuff online about when you get older. Like my dad, for example, was a huge music person. I mean, he had records playing, cool, good records. He had great taste when I was a kid. So into music. He had these huge speakers, great system. Doesn't care a lick about music anymore. I mean, he's in his 70s. And so I find that really interesting. And it's almost like irritating to have music on. He doesn't really want to listen to it. But I used to be the person who people would ask for new music recs. And I even hosted and produced like a bunch of music shows. I was really into it. I mean, with you,
Yeah.
Sarah,
Yeah.
even on shows that you were on with me. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and the other day, I was in iTunes and it was like scrolling artists, like new artists, and I didn't recognize any of them. And it just kind of blew me away. Um, but I find that one thing other than like 80s music and nostalgic music, because again, I'm not really venturing into the new music territory because I think that younger people, it's more geared toward younger people anyway. But one thing that has really opened up my world in music in the last couple years is film composers. Like Trent Reznor, for example, is someone who has done a lot more film scoring.
I mean, he's like maybe like the best version of like what you're talking about, but the,
He is one of the
I assume,
best for
yeah.
sure. And I find that music, because there's not a lot of lyrics, and that might be part of it. There's not a lot of voice. It's usually more atmospheric. And uh, I've been listening to that music at home, like on record and on even CD, and online, on my Alexa or whatever. And I just kind of plug in the name of the composer, like composers that I really like their style. And
Hmm.
I'm telling you, I can listen to it all day long. And it's like, there is a totally different world that I have accessed.
Like giving you a mood
Exactly.
rather than, filling your head with like lyrics and, kind of like pop culture
Exactly.
stuff.
And there's a soothingness about it. And it takes you on a kind of an adventure, washes over you kind of thing. So I'm gonna let you guys in on 5 composers that have really kind of rocked my world in the last few years. And this is only 5, there's tons more, but these are the ones that really speak to me. I have a huge girl crush on this Micah Levy. She also goes by the name of Mikachu. She's British. She scored Under the Skin by Jonathan Glazer, which was that kind of science fiction movie by that music video
Oh,
director
Scarlett
with
Johansson?
Scarlett Johansson. One of my favorite movies.
It's a pretty good movie. Yeah.
So good. And the score, I mean, honestly, it's like one of the coolest scores ever. It just gives you, it's kind of an otherworldly kind of thing. She also did a movie called Monos, which a lot of people haven't seen. I saw it in the theater in Los Angeles last year. Really highly recommend it. It's a little harrowing about kids with guns in a jungle, kind of thing. But she also
Oh
scored
God.
that. It's
Uh,
the score's incredible. It's worth watching just for that. Maybe you shut your eyes. I don't know. Johan Johansson, who's Icelandic. I happen to have 5 different people from 5 different places in the world, which I thought was pretty cool. It just happened to be that way. So Michael Levy's from London, and then we've got Johan Johansson from Iceland. I've talked about him on the show. When I talked about the movie Mandy with Nicolas Cage, one of my favorite movies. But he is incredible. He scored Mandy, Sicario, if you've seen that, Arrival, which is that sci-fi movie with Amy Adams. He also was a consultant on the movie Mother, the Aronofsky.
oh, I hate that
I know you
movie.
hated that.
Hate that movie, but I didn't hate the music. So,
Well, he passed around the time Mandy was made. So it's unfortunate because he passed. He was in his 40s. I'm really sad because he was a really talented guy. Ennio Morricone is very prolific. He's an Italian composer. He's done everything from Polanski, Brian De Palma, John Carpenter, Lucio Fulci. He scored The Thing with John Carpenter. He's actually the reason why I'm really into him right now is he's done a lot of those Giallo movies. Ones that I've seen recently, Who Saw Her Die, What Have You Done to Solange? And this is not Solange Knowles, Balance's sister, a different Solange, but his stuff is incredible. I highly recommend you checking him out. He's done a lot of stuff. And then number 4 is Alexandre Desplat. He's French, and he's done tons of Wes Anderson, a lot of other stuff, but he's French. He did the Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom. Very
mhm.
playful, charming, brilliant guy. I'm sure you'd recognize a lot of stuff. We used to actually see him in our neighborhood in Los Angeles, and I used to just be like very excited when I
Like,
see him.
hi, I like your
I love
music.
your music, Alexandre. ¿Cómo
Yeah.
estás? Finally, and this is just, he's not doing much anymore, but John Carpenter. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. He obviously directed Halloween. He's an American. He did the score for Halloween, which is like one of the most prominent scores. You all know it. But he did all of his other, he scored a lot of his own movies. The Fog, I love, Christine, Assault on Precinct 13. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch has a really cool theme. Anyway, so while you guys are quarantining for however long this is going to last, here's another thing for you guys to check out and be entertained by. So please let me know. I want to know if you guys are into composers and who you're into. please email us at hi@havesuchagoodday.com.
Please do. You know, it's funny, Heather, that you mentioned in passing Carrie. Um, I woke up in the middle of the night a few nights ago, and like I had to pee, whatever. And I like there was just like something weird going on where I was like, I felt like I was in the movie Carrie. And
Wow, why?
it, because like I was peeing and like I don't know, like there's liquid and whatever. And like I was like, it was 4 a.m. I was asleep and I was just like, I just want to go back to sleep. But I did think to myself, like, I want to talk to Heather about this later. Because like this is like a bizarre thing that I'm thinking of right now,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
it's totally my jam. You know me so well.
Yeah. Yeah, as I'm awake for like 5 minutes right now, in the middle of the night. Like I'm like, this is like we should talk about
I
Carrie.
love it. You know, it's funny. I can't tell you how much inspiration I get from, and it's not just the standard inspiration from horror movies, but like for example, The Fog is a great Carpenter movie that I'd seen when I was a kid or something, and I rewatched it. So many good rewatches I've been experiencing lately. One of my favorite John Carpenter movies is Christine. I love that is one of my favorites. Oh God, and that score is so incredible. Highly recommend a rewatch. Being an adult watching that stuff is way different than being a teenager, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no kidding. So Heather, how can people support us?
Well, if you go to patreon.com/ have such a good day, we've missed you guys. We haven't seen a lot of activity. We have been posting a few little videos here and there, and we would love to have more of you join us. It's very easy to join. We have 3 really low end tiers that offer a variety of little perks. And it's a $1 level, $5 level, $10 level, anything that you can do to support our ad-free community. And so come check us out. We're also on any podcast app that you can imagine. If we're not, please let us know, and we'll try to get on it because
We'll
we're
get
on
on
platforms
it.
now.
Exactamond. Yes. Patreon.com/ have such a good day. Check it out. And thank you to everybody who supports us. We really appreciate it. Well, Heather, I think we're wrapping this bag up.
We're gonna wrap. That's what we're gonna do.
We're gonna wrap. Before we go, because I was thinking about like memories and music and the fact that like I also like I have a hard time with music right now. Like I get jittery. I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to like people talking
Even
about
rap.
like stuff. Even rap. Yeah. I
We are
know.
changing,
I
Sarah.
know. I really am. However, someone mentioned the Alan Parsons Project to me.
Interesting.
Um, right, right, which is and the song that they meant was "Eye in the Sky," which, if you're of a certain age, you would know that song. It's like from like the like early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So, eye in the
Oh
sky,
yeah.
looking at you,
Mm-hmm.
but like I listened to it today and I was like, this actually gave me some joy.
Oh,
So,
100%.
yeah, like yeah, I'm gonna get back to the music now. Maybe I'm one of those ladies that just like listens to like old shit,
You know,
and that's
there's
fine.
something
Who
so
knows?
soothing about the nostalgia of music and the muscle memory of like knowing the lyrics, and you're like, whoa, like I'll start singing and I'll be like, I didn't even know I knew those lyrics, like of some
Right,
like
right,
Bryan
yes.
Adams song or something. I'm like embarrassed that I'm like
Yeah.
singing this thing.
You're like, I know literally every lyric of this song. Like, whoa, wow. Yeah, no, that's how I felt about this Ellen Parsons. Like, no shade, but
Mhm.
like, I don't even remember like liking that band. And I'm like, oh, I know that song. It's one of my favorite songs
Oh,
ever.
yeah, and honestly, I really think a lot of this has to do with just habit, and you get into these habits and you forget what it's like to dance and to listen to cool music, and it's like, then when you put it on and you take the time to do it, you're like, "Ah, I miss this," and you kinda get back into the groove, so I think it's just habit forming, like anything. Anyway, On that note, we would like you guys to create a habit of listening to us every week.
We really would. We really would. We really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who listens, who spreads the word, who subscribes. We'd love to know what your favorite, podcatcher is, so that we know how you're, finding the show. But man, we are just very thankful, and we're so happy to do this with you every week.
We are. I look forward to it. So you guys stay safe and join us on Discord. And we love ya, and we'll see you very soon. Have such a good day.